Hi, today let's discuss about arrays in Go. The way we declare arrays in Go is just like any other keyword, any other variable, start with var and give the name of the array and the data type. And specifically in case of array, the data type includes the length of the array and the data type for each element in that array. And here is how we initialize it. You're assigning the array to the variable my array, and the assigned value is array of 4 length and with these values. And if you need to set a value or change a value in the specific location, you can actually use the index, which starts with 0, and then set the value to that element. And you can print individual elements in the array by using the index. Let's go ahead and run and see. As you can see, it printed 100, which is the overwritten value for the index 0, and then rest of the values were the values from the initialization. Okay. So here what I'm trying to do is basically I'm trying to access the array, which is so I'm trying to access the array here beyond the length of that array. So I'm trying to access the index position 4. And as you can see, it is already throwing a compilation error saying that index 4 is out of bound because index starts with 0. The last element's index is 3. You're trying to access beyond that. Same thing here. You can neither assign nor access a value outside the range. Now, let's try to print the capacity of the index. So the way we print the capacity of the index is there are two built-in functions called length and capacity, and you pass the array to that function and it will return the length and capacity. So in case of an array, length and capacity will be same, but you will actually be using the capacity function more with the slice, which is for another topic. Now let's run this and see what it's going to print. So since while initializing the array, you give the value as length as 4, the length will be 4 in this case when you run it. As you can see, it's 4 and 4. So next, suppose you have an array and you want to loop through the elements in the array. So for that, you'll have to use the for loop. So I'm using the previous initialization and I'm running the for loop. Let me comment the previous prints just to keep it clutter free. So I'm using the for loop from 0 to length of the array and incrementing 1 by 1. And since I'm starting with 0, the first index of the array is 0, and it will print the first value of the first element of the array. And once it reaches the length, once the counter I reaches the length of the array, it will exit. So it printed the index 0, value 100, index 1, value 2, so on. And you can also use a range keyword. With the range keyword, you don't have to worry about giving the initial value and the final value, and also incrementing. So basically, with the range keyword, the above for loop simplifies as here in line 39. So you're ranging on the array, and it returns a index and value variables. You're just printing them. So the output is same. but it's more convenient to use a range keyword than using the for loop with the counter variables. Suppose there is a new array of integer type with the elements of integer type, but the length is 5. Now, if you try to assign the previous array to this array, it's going to be error because with the array, the size is fixed. And also what that means is array of one size is not the same as array of another type and that size. There are two different types. So I can explain that in detail using this example. So here, for example, I have an integer I and integer j, and I can assign the value of j into I because they are of the same type. But in case of array, if I have an array of 4 int and there is another array of 5 int, now I try to assign, it will throw the error. So let's run this code and see. As you can see, it's a compile time error saying that it cannot use this array as this type array. Okay, let's go back to the previous example. So now next what we can do is basically, if you want to declare the array and initialize at the same time, just like any other variable, if you compare this with the previous one that is here. So basically, instead of line 11 and 12, I'm just having one line, which is line 15. And in the first case, you have a var keyword to declare and then initialization in the other line. So here I have colon equals to the shortcut notation to directly infer the type based on the initial value that you're giving on the right side. So if I run this one, it will still print the same. In this case, the length is 5, and the capacity is 5 as well. There's a typo in line 70, which is okay. It's supposed to come in the other piece. Okay, let me rerun. As you can see, it printed the array in the length and capacity, which is 5 in this case. So I can also do something like this, which is like, suppose if you have an array of some arbitrary length and it might be difficult to count the elements to initialize it. So you can, what you can do is you can do dot 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 instead of the actual length. So what happens in this case is compiler will count the variables, count the elements, and define the type with that length. So this doesn't mean the array is dynamic. It is still fixed length, but the size is defined at the compile time by the compiler by looking at the number of elements. I can prove this by running it. Okay. So I can run this, and as you see, the length is fixed at 5 because the number of elements that you passed during the initialization is 5. And next, suppose you declared this array to be of size 6, but in the initialization you give only 5 elements. So what happens in this case is the length will still be 6, but the 6th element, which is not mentioned in the initialization, will be defaulted to its 0 value based on the type of that element. In this case, all the elements are of type int. So on the default or on the zero value for the integer type and go is 0. So as you, when you run this, you will see 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 0. Okay, and try again. As you can see, the last element is 0 and the length is still 6. And what if you gave the number of elements in the installation more than the length itself? This again will be a compile time error. Just like in the previous example, you try to access or insert value into an index that is outside the value, outside the length. It's a compile time error. Similarly, here you have the compile time error that you're trying to use the array out of its range. I hope this helped. Thank you for watching.